What is up, everybody? Welcome to the MMA Engine and welcome to Probability. We're going to take a data-driven perspective into these props for UFC 281, and we have a 14-fight card, lots of options, lots of potential violent spots as well, some overs that I like as well, so it should be a fun show. I'm here, as always, with Uncle Weezy. Weezy, what is up? You looking forward to 281?
Yeah, man, it's a great card. I always look forward to this show because it's kind of when we both explore these time props in depth, bounce ideas off of each other, look at the numbers as they're stated, and figure out which way we want to go. So this is an important card. We got great, robust data sets to draw from here. And as a result, a lot of these lines are going to be priced fairly to start, but the market might overreact in one way or another, and it's our job to take, like a rubber band that goes too far, it's going to snap back. So we got to find those spots that are underpriced and attack them.
I agree. I see the chat is blowing up already. I see you in there, Victor, Propaholic, Andy Mush, Daz, Chicken, Rob as well. Thank you all for hanging out. If you guys have not already, be sure to leave a like and subscribe here to the MMA Engine. And I see you in there, Matthew, saying these data sets are Parker Porter size. Heck yeah. Parker Porter.
They are. We love it. That's why we love these pay-per-view cards, man. Nobody making debuts. A lot of data to draw from. It gives us a really nice benchmark.
Absolutely. But yeah, we have a lot to talk about. 14 fights to get through. So I say we get right into it. And we are going to start with Carlos Oberg going against Nikolai Nega-Marionu, and I'm going to refresh the odds here. We have the over-under. There's 1.5 and 2.5. So the over 1.5 is minus 145. This is on Bet Online. The under 1.5 is plus 115. The over 2.5 is plus 125. The under 2.5 is minus 155. The fight goes to decision, plus 105. The fight doesn't go to decision is minus 135. This is one where I'm kind of leaning the over 1.5 there at minus 145, just due to how tough Nikolai Nega-Marionu is. And I feel like if Nega-Marionu does win this fight, I feel like it's either by decision or just kind of breaking Oberg as the fight goes on. So I think the over 1.5 is something I'm highly considering rather than just betting the Oberg side, because I think it kind of covers both sides here. I don't think Oberg starches Nega-Marionu. I'd be very impressed if he did that, but I don't see it. And like I said, I don't see Nega-Marionu going out there and starching Oberg. I think it's going to have to be like a grind and eventually get him out of there. So I'm liking the over. I'm curious to see if anything sticks out of this one, Weezy.
Yeah, for sure. So, if we look at these numbers here, I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you guys can see. If we go into about 150%, we look at these numbers. This here is the comparison to the benchmark for the division. So we're going to take that implied probability, but we're going to take the divisional finish rate and we're going to subtract the implied probability. If we get a positive number, it means we've got a little bit of an edge on the books. If we get a negative number, it means we're paying a little bit more for the line than what the benchmark is telling us we should pay. So we can see here, we got some very fairly priced lines at 3.66% underpriced, 1.63% overpriced, and then right about zero here. And when we go over to the non-violent side, we're seeing lines that are overpriced by a little bit here, about 5.6%. 3.6% and about 10% on that plus 105 fight goes to decision. So, but what we do see right here on this over 1.5, Brady, that you were just talking about, in the smaller sample size of data that we have to deal with here, which is going to be a 9-fight sample size, 4 of their 9 fights have went to decision. And if we look here, we can see that about 2/3, 6 of their 9 fights have went over 1.5 rounds. And I believe all of Nega-Marionu's fights have went over 1.5 rounds. So minus 145 is overpriced by about 5.6% compared to the benchmark. But when we compare the over 1.5 rates at the UFC level of Nega-Marionu and Oberg combined, and we subtract that 0.5918, we realize that these guys are going over 1.5 2/3 of the time, and they're going over 1.5 at a 13% rate better than the division. Then we look at the stylistic matchup as well, right? Nega-Marionu's got some power, but he has not landed a knockdown at the UFC level. So on the feet, this guy is more of a zombie, walking forward, eating 2 or 3 shots to land one, and really kind of wearing you down because he's got tremendous durability and tremendous conditioning. He can push a pace for a full 3 rounds. For a big guy, you don't see that very often. So stylistically, we don't really see Nega-Marionu getting finished. And he's a guy who tends to wear on you as fights go on, with that chin, with that frustration of why won't this fucking guy go down, you know? But what I do worry about for the under 1 point, for an over 1.5 is, you know, does Oberg just put it on him like he put it on Kennedy in that first round, and the ref steps in, even though Nega-Marianu's not going down? Or does Nega-Marionu take down Carlos Oberg, get on top of him, and then exploit a huge hole, which we haven't seen yet at this level? But either way, you know, I think the data is telling us that this is a little bit overpriced, but it's not overpriced in comparison to how these guys are going over 1.5 and how these guys are going over 1.5 in comparison to the division. So minus 145 for the over 1.5 is my favorite bet for this fight.
Yeah, I don't hate it, especially, you know, stylistically, because if Nega-Marionu does like push him against the cage, wear on him a little bit, that can definitely take some time off the clock. This is pretty interesting. On 5 dimes, it's one of those situations where they have the fight doesn't go to decision at minus 210, and the fight goes at plus 160. So just a gigantic difference.
Yeah, that is a pretty big difference. Wow, fight goes at minus 2. Did you say minus 210 for fight doesn't go?
Fight doesn't go minus 210.
Okay, and then plus 160 for fight goes. So yeah. Bet the fight goes on 5 dimes. I bet the fight doesn't go on, at minus 135, and you've got a nice little number here. It's the best way to go. So if you are on the violence side here, I would go fight doesn't go to decision at minus 135. But I do like that over 1.5 at minus 145. Not terribly overpriced in comparison to the benchmark, and underpriced in comparison to how these guys go over 1.5 in comparison to the division and the implied probability of the line. So I do like that over 1.5.
Yep, I am right there with you. All right, we'll move on to the next fight. We have Montel Jackson going against Julio Arce. We have the over-under set at 2.5 rounds, the over 2.5 minus 167, the under 2.5 plus 137. The fight goes to decision minus 150. The fight doesn't go to decision is plus 120. This is another over spot for me, if anything. The only thing that concerns me is Montel Jackson has extreme power for the bantamweight division. I think he has like 10 knockdowns in like 8 or 9 fights. So that's the one concern there. But, you know, Julio Arce is very tough. 69% strike and defense. I feel like he's tough enough to hang in there. Montel Jackson, at the end of the day, he couldn't finish JP Vlismas, which is kind of concerning there. So I think Arce is going to be tough enough to kind of hang on. Maybe he does get hurt here and there, but I'm kind of leaning over again. So I'm another one where I like an over, which is very unusual for me, but let's see if the data lines up on this one as well.
Yeah, he didn't finish Vlismas, but I mean, he beat 7 shades of shit out of him. I mean, I can't believe that fight didn't get stopped. There was something like 4 knockdowns, and poor JP just got the shit beaten out of him there. So I think that fight could have easily been stopped. Montel Jackson has been doing exactly what we'd expect him to do in these last 2 fights. But I've also said, during both of those fights, like, I know that his opponents dropped out, but come on, man. Strader and JP Buys, this guy is spinning his wheels. And now we've got, a guy in Arce that's a real opponent for him, somebody that's close to his level in a lot of places. But Montel's just got freakish measurables, crazy power, fists like canned hams on a bantamweight, So he's definitely a finisher. These violence lines are actually underpriced in comparison to the benchmark, which isn't something that we see very much in Montel Jackson fights. And, what's also interesting is that if we look down here, Arce's been finished in 2 of 5 losses and in 1 of 3 UFC losses. Both of these guys, though, very durable, only finished in 1 of 5 combined losses. These guys are finishing inside the distance less than 50% of the time. That's why this line is plus money for the fight doesn't go here. If we go over to the non-violent side, we're going to see overpriced by 9.14 in comparison to the benchmark, which is a lot, and overpriced by about 5.65% here in comparison to the over 2.5 at minus 167. So we're not getting breaks anywhere in this area. We're getting little breaks here in these 2 numbers, 2.08 and 1.93, but I consider that to be the least important metric of the three. So I would need less juice in these non-violence lines for them to catch my eye. And I also think that these violence lines are a little bit underpriced for a fight where two guys have a lot of power here and where Montel Jackson's ground game is very good. So yeah, I for two durable guys like this, I would need a bigger plus number in order to jump into the pool here. So nothing is really kind of catching my eye on this one. I don't know about you.
Same thing. I would lean the over if anything, but again, Montel Jackson power kind of scares the crap out of me. So I think it's one I'm fine with passing on, unless the lines do change a little bit. So we'll have to see throughout the week. Moving on, we have Michael Trezano going against Sungwoo Choi. Nothing yet on Bet Online. I'm going to check 5 Dimes. 5 Dimes does have some stuff.
We do have a line. We got a plus 170 for the under 2.5 and minus 210 for the over 2.5.
Okay, I see. And it moved just a little bit, a tad. It's now plus 165 for the under 2.5, and then minus 205 for the over. And then 5 Dimes has the fight goes to decision minus 180, and the fight doesn't go to decision is plus 170. And man, I don't know. This is kind of a weird one because Choi hits pretty hard. I guess I could potentially see him finishing Trezano, but Trezano's typically tough. I know he got finished in his last fight. Both guys to me are super tough. So this is another one where I guess I'd lean the over, but there's no way I'm touching minus 205. I think this is gonna be a firefight. So I guess violence at this price tag, but anything sticking out here, Weezy?
Well, what's sticking out is that the violent side has plus money numbers next to it, and the non-violent side has pretty big juice numbers. So I'm looking for an excuse to bet those unders, right? And the excuses here, like for instance, for the fight doesn't go at plus 170. 6% underpriced in comparison to the benchmark. So that's telling you the market is begging you to bet the under. They're saying, man, we got to shade it in order to get some interest that direction because people are thinking Sungwoo Choi and Trezano are going to go the distance. But I think I'd rather be on the plus money side here, Brady, for a couple of reasons. Number one, I think Sungwoo Choi and Trezano are most ineffective when they're on the ground, right? But neither one of these guys is really shooting takedowns or trying to, grapple their way to victories, which means they're going to stand and bang. Sungwoo Choi's got power, and Trezano, he dropped Almeida in the first round of the last fight. But it's a weird one because if we go down here to the UFC statistics, we see that only one of their 6 combined UFC wins is finished inside the distance, but 4 of their 7 losses have finished inside the distance. So these guys are finishing inside the distance 38.46% of the time. The fight doesn't go to decision sitting at 37%. So we're getting a 1.42% break there, but we're getting a 6.97% overpayment for this one here at just a little bit more because it looks like the fight that did finish finished over 2.5 rounds, not under. So that's why we've got a little bit of a divergence there. Either way, I think I'd just rather be on the fight doesn't go underpriced by 6%. This only underpriced by 0.28%. So definitely take the fight doesn't go at plus 170 rather than the under 2.5 at plus 165. Obviously, that makes a lot more sense to go here, but that would be my pick for this one. I'd rather just take the plus money rather than go minus 210 and see Sungwoo Choi land a big shot. And we've seen Trezano not only dropped before, but finished before.
Yeah, I'd lead violence if anything. Where'd you see that plus 170 at? I don't see
that. Must have been on fightodds.io because I was definitely looking at some other spots.
I see a plus 140 best line for the fight doesn't go. I see the plus 175 for the under 2.5 though.
For the under 2.5, is that? Oh, well, here, let me just look real quick here because there were some lines. So it looks like the under 2.5 at 5 Dimes is sitting at plus 175. And then plus 170 for the fight. Yeah, that definitely is not there anymore.
Yeah, I think I see plus 140. Like the best.
That makes a lot more sense. But I did see that line somewhere. It might have even been on, because I was looking here on Bet Online, and we did get some new lines. But Trezano, yeah, that one isn't even up yet. So, yeah, thanks for correcting that. That is much more in line at plus 140 and plus 165 with where these things should be priced. So at those prices, man, it's a stay away on both sides.
Okay, yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I'm good with staying away. Let's move on to the next fight. Oh boy, we have a women's strawweight fight. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts on this one. We have Karolina Kovakovich going against Silvana Gomez Juarez. We have the over under set at 2.5 rounds. The over 2.5 minus 140. The under 2.5 is plus 110. That opened up at plus 190. Can't believe it. Wish I got on that, but the fight goes to decision on 5 dimes minus 125. The fight doesn't go to decision is now minus 115. So this is one where I do like violence, but they're not giving us any value here at all. So probably not even going to touch it. I mean, we should be getting big plus money. I mean, at the end of the day, these girls are strawweights, but I think they're kind of all over it and a lot more. So I'm not going to be touching this. I see it right there, 23% overpayment. Can't touch it, but I would lean this fight does finish, but we're not getting any value at all.
Yeah, when the entire market is on one side of a bet, where we're going to see that on this prop template, Brady, is in this row number 9 here, and that's the divisional finish rate versus the implied probability of the line. And what that means is, in this case, the division finishes at about 30.5%. We're paying 53.5%. So that's a 23% overpayment. And that tells us when we get that big of a number in this number 9 line here, it means that the entire market is expecting violence here. But it also tells us that these, non-violence lines are going to be severely underpriced. And we can see here 13.74% underpriced for the over 2.5, because 115-pound go over 2.5 73% of the time. We could see that number right there. We're only paying 59% here. So that's a big break. Can we find an excuse for this fight to go over 2.5? I mean, potentially, yeah, right? I mean, Karolina Kovakovich has been finished in 3 of 7 professional losses and 3 of 7 UFC losses. So the cool thing is that Kovakovich is not really a finisher, and Gomez Juarez definitely is a finisher, but she's finishing lower level opponents. Now, Kovakovich has been through the entire division here. And if we kind of go here and we look at Kovakovich's record, we're going to see just a lot higher quality opponents. Alexa Grasso, Yan Xiaonan, Michelle Waterson, Jessica Andrade is the only one to knock her out. Felice Herrig, Claudia Gadelha, Joanna Jędrzejczyk, Rose Namajunas. So she's been fighting ladies who, obviously finish higher level opponents than what Silvana does. So there's no fucking way that I am paying. What do we got here? Yeah, minus 115 for a fight doesn't go to decision. 53% implied probability when 30% of these fights go, finish inside the distance. So yeah, these violence props are way overpriced for a women's 115-pound fight.
Yeah, I mean, I see why they're doing it. I mean, Juarez has not even seen the second round yet, I don't think, in the UFC. I think all 3 of her fights finished in the very first. Godinez first round, Demopoulos first round, and then of course, Liang Na first round. So yeah, probably one I'm going to pass on. Brandon, Propaholic, saying I'm taking a shot on the over 1.5. Over 1.5 is minus 260.
Look at that. And what do you got for the under?
The under 1.5 is plus 200.
200 there. That's 12% overpriced. And the over 1.5 was what?
Minus 260.
6.7% underpriced in comparison to the benchmark, but 10% overpriced when you compare how often these ladies go over 1.5, which evidently is about 62% of the time.
And for Juarez, it's 0. So I don't know. Yeah. I'm going to probably pass on this one. I mean, maybe, yeah, I don't really see myself betting on this one.
I don't either, man. It's you're going to be holding your breath every time Silvana plants her feet and throw because she's just mean on the feet. But you'd like to be getting some kind of plus money here to have the balls to take that over, and you're not getting anything even close to the situation. And then not only that, you've missed the line too. To say you could have gotten the under 2.5 at what?
Plus 190.
And now you're sitting there looking at plus 120. It's like, dude, I'm late to this party, man. All the good beer's gone. Maybe I should just go home,
Yeah, let's go home. I agree. All right, let's move on to the next fight. It is this is my favorite fight and your favorite fight in the prelims. We got Matt Frivola going against Ottman Isaitar. We have the over-under 2.5 rounds. The over 2.5 plus 141. The under 2.5 rounds is minus 171. This is another one, Wheezy, where the under 2.5 opened at plus 135.
Yeah.
Plus 135, which is just wild. On 5 dimes, they have the fight goes to decision plus 180, and the fight doesn't go to decision at minus 260. I know you're thinking violence. I'm thinking violence, and the bookies are definitely thinking violence.
Yeah, of course they are. Do we have a fight doesn't go number here for this fight anywhere?
Yeah, 260.
Minus 260, and the fight goes is what?
The fight goes is plus 180. Yeah, plus 180.
180. I would suggest to people, if you're looking at these fight goes and the over 2.1 numbers here, and you're seeing these big fat plus numbers, 13.72, about 12% here, about 8.24% here, I would suggest looking at Frivola by decision instead of fight goes to decision, right? Because do you really see Ottman Isaitar kind of like hanging around the outside and picking this guy apart for 3 rounds? A guy in Frivola who's been dropped 5 times at the UFC level and knocked out twice. This guy Isaitar hits like a truck. You know that. I know that. Everybody in Fight Island who saw his buddies scaling the fucking wall with a duffel bag knows that this guy's got some extra help maybe. And Frivola, like you said, sometimes he shows up and he fights really smart, and sometimes he shows up like in the Valdez fight, in the Polo Reyes fight, in the Venata fight, where he just goes out there and says, you know what, I'm going to trust my chin and I'm going to knock my opponent out. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Against a lower level opponent like Genaro Valdez, it certainly worked. Ottman Isaitar hits harder than Genaro Valdez does. Yes. So, so we're gonna have to see here, because I think there's a couple of different ways. You could look at Isaitar, for an early knockout, which is what he's done twice at the UFC level, and we've seen not only that, we've seen Frivola knocked out twice in the first round by Polo Reyes and by Terrence McKinney. So, we that's one way to look at it. But in terms of just going for the time props here, man, fight doesn't go to decision at minus 260. It's tempting, but it's 22% overpriced in comparison to the benchmark. These guys are only finishing inside the distance in this division about 50% of the time. These guys only go inside the distance about 60% of the time. We can see that number right down here. 60% of their fights finish inside the distance. So why should we pay 72? It is an overpayment. So as nice as these lines are for the fight doesn't go, I can't advocate betting them there. And in terms of plus 180 is a fat number for fight goes to decision. I kind of like that, but I'm going to be holding my breath and my sphincter is going to be like able to crush a diamond. So I don't think I want to do that either. If I'm thinking over, I'm thinking Frivola by decision. If I'm thinking under, I'm thinking maybe Isaitar by first round knockout. But in terms of the time props, I think there's better ways to play them.
Yeah, I mean, I like violence, but I hate the price tag, because I can easily see a situation where Frivola out wrestles them for 3 rounds. The decision only for Frivola could really be something to look at, because if he does go in there and fight smart with the right game plan, I think he can very well win a decision. And then maybe the finish only on the flip side for Isaitar could be something to look at. And like you said, the first round knockout prop is something I'll be highly considering, especially if Frivola goes out there and stands and bangs with the guy. I mean, he's gonna get hurt bad if he does that. So I think there's interesting ways to play it, but minus 260. I mean, you don't want to lay that.
It's just a lot. It's such a high implied probability. I mean, if you want to throw it like in a 4-leg parlay with a couple of other what you would consider to be like obvious lines, because Frivola could finish Isaitar as well. We just don't know what Isaitar looks like if he faces any kind of adversity, because we're not really seeing him face it against high level competition. So it's definitely yeah, this is a hard one to just play the straight time props, because I think they're kind of built into the win conditions for each fighter where you can get better lines.
Yeah, and somebody in the chat is saying Isaitar by potato, and I agree with that.
Yeah, man, those potatoes, dude, a lot of carbohydrates, a lot of nutritional value in there. I love potatoes, and maybe that's why Atman Isaitar is so strong. Just like Hulk Hogan, he got those big biceps by saying his prayers and eating his vitamins and not shooting steroids into his arse. This is a guy in Atman Isaitar who has a crazy amount of power, and it comes from his carbohydrate-heavy diet, not from steroids.
Not from steroids, indeed. All right. We'll move on to the next fight. We have Andre Petroski going against Wellington Turman. We have the over 2.5 plus 136. The under 2.5 is minus 166. The fight goes to decision plus 170. The fight doesn't go to decision is minus 230. So the bookies are expecting violence. I kind of expect violence here, but I hate the price tag. I'm personally thinking a potential late finish for Wellington Turman and even Petroski. We talked about it last night on Stat Diggers, right? It's taken this guy a while to finish complete bums. I mean, it took him over 12 and a half minutes to finish a complete bum in Michael Gilmore. It took him over 12 and a half minutes to finish a complete bum in Zhang Hu. So if he finishes, Turman under 12 and a half minutes, I'd be fairly surprised. So the over is kind of tempting at this price tag. I think these violence props I think the prices are just off here. I don't know what they're thinking.
Yeah, well, what they're thinking is one of the things that we always talk about, Brady, and that's a killer be killed fighter, right? And we got that in Petroski. 9 professional fights, 9 of them have finished inside the distance. His only loss in all 8 wins. But the names, like the Nick Maximov finish is by far the most impressive finish on his resume. And even Maximov has been cut, so a guy like Wellington Turman, who's 26 years old, but who's already got, 6 UFC level fights, it's going to be a much tougher road to hoe for him in order to be able to get this finish against a higher level opponent. And, you're not really subbing Wellington Turman unless you really hurt him first, because the guy's a legit Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, unlike Nick Maximov, who's more of a wrestler, submission grappler, a kitchen sink purple belt, if you will, but he's not really, a long-time black belt. So I do like the non-violence props here, but these violence props are overpriced. 14.5%, 12.3%, and 10.73%. And then when we compare them to the benchmarks of how these guys have competed at the UFC level, they're still overpriced when we compare these implied probabilities to the fight doesn't go rate, to the under 2.5 rate, and to the under 1.5 rate of both fighters at the UFC level. And when we go over here to the other side, we see exactly the opposite, which is why the first bet that I placed this week was the over 2.5, Brady, plus 136 right now. I got it at plus 135. So I missed that line movement, put my fist through the wall. I was like, fuck, 136. I missed out, but hey, this is, we have to take the good with the bad. But 42.37% implied probability, underpriced by 7.5% compared to the benchmark, or underpriced by 13.18% compared to how these guys go over 2.5 at the UFC level, which is actually 55.55% of the time. 5 of these guys' 9 combined UFC fights have went over 2.5 rounds, and they're going over 2.5 at a 5.66% rate, higher than the division. So that's what we call a trifecta bet. And it's not like we're getting 2 or 3 2% breaks here. We're getting a 7.5% break, a 13.2% break, and a 5.6% break. Add those numbers up, it's like almost a 26% edge over the books. It's a bet I have to make. If one of these guys gets an early finish, I'll be out 1 unit. But If they don't, I'll be up 1.35 units, and there will be a party at Wheezy's.
Heck yeah. I mean, for me, I'm personally just looking at betting the Turman money line. So I think I'm just going to stay away from the time props in this one, but it makes a lot of sense. I'd much rather bet that than be on the violence there. I'm personally liking like maybe a Turman late finish. I know Probaholics saying the Turman round, sub round 2, sub round 3 sprinkles. And the sub round 3 sprinkle is something I'm definitely going to be looking at. I think we could see a late finish on the Turman side, but this is not Michael Gilmore and this is not Zhang Hu, so we'll see what happens. But if I was forced to bet, I would take the over, but it's another one I'm probably going to stay away from.
Yeah, like I said, I've got that bet on the over 2.5 at plus money. I always love, when you get a trifecta bet, that's a great thing. But then when there's a plus money number next to that trifecta bet, that's even better. So love it, love both sides of that one. But the over 2.5 at that current price really stands alone over the over 1.5 and the fight goes in terms of value comparison to all the benchmarks that we keep here. So definitely a great line there in my opinion.
Yep. Bryce has a question for you. He's saying, Uncle Weezy, any thoughts on playing overs on fights when both fighters have high finish rates? I started to get burnt on bets like Jan O'Malley, fight doesn't go. Costa Rockhold, fight doesn't go. And Craig Ozdemir.
Yeah, and I've gotten burned on Craig Ozdemir not going to decision. Jan O'Malley, I had a finish only prop. And I think Costa Rockhold, I think I had Costa by knockout in that one. So, dude, it's going to happen. And that's why we do this show, Bryce, is that when you think with your head, when you're watching tape, oh, man, this fight finishes inside the distance. There's a high probability that everybody else that's out there betting is seeing the same shit that you're seeing, right? So it's going to push that line all in one direction, all towards those violence bets. So you need to not only use your eyes to get reads to determine whether you think the fight's going to finish inside the distance or not, but you also need to take that betting line, convert it to an implied probability, and then compare that implied probability of the betting line against the divisional finish rate, against the fighters' combined finish rates, against the benchmark for the division. Compare all those benchmarks against each other to determine whether that line is way overpriced or not. Because a lot of times, you're going to see something that's incredibly overpriced. And even though in your head, that fight's going to finish inside the distance more times than it's not, that fat plus money number they're hanging in front of you on the fight goes might be worth betting because it's way underpriced in comparison to these benchmarks. So don't just look at, these bets didn't cash. Look at, did you make a good bet? Did you overpay for the bet? And if the answer is no to both of those, chalk it up to variance and keep doing the same thing. Because when I was talking to my guy Tajik Bey earlier on the DMs, he said, it's process over results. Because if the process is rooted in methodology that works over the long term, you need to be paying more attention to the long-term process that you're following rather than the short-term results that you're getting.
Yep, couldn't have said it better myself. Got to stay consistent, what you choose to do. Just stay consistent, most importantly. But yeah, I did get burned on the Craig. I'll bet Craig violence every time, though. I mean, I've bet it every time, and I've only lost once. So I mean, I'm going to keep attacking it, but it all depends on the number, really.
And that's another, example of process over results. This guy's a violent man. Bet the violence props. And if it works 5 times and it doesn't work once, don't just concentrate on the one time that it didn't work. Look back prior to that and see if it was working, and then you can just chalk it up to variance. And then maybe that next time people are going to be like, this guy Craig goes to decision all the time, and then you get minus 150 for the fight doesn't go and you fucking max bet it, Look, it's short, those short-term moves, but it's the long-term process that we really have to stick to.
By the way, do you know who Paul Craig's fighting next? I think he's fighting somebody exciting.
Yeah, I forgot, but I did see that he has a fight.
Pulling up right now. So Paul Craig is fighting Johnny Walker?
Ooh, dude, you see, now that fight is finishing early. And maybe, there might be some people like, fucking this guy Craig always goes to decision, and maybe you can catch that opener at a good price, but it's probably going to open around -400, to be honest with you.
Goodness gracious. And shout out to Propaholic. Loud and proud. I bet Jared Vandera. Good. There you go. I've had my fair share of bad bets. Gina Mazzani, Corey McCann, the list goes on and on. It happens. This is the game we play. So shout out to Propaholic there. All right. Let us move on to this next one. We have Aaron Blanchfield going against Molly McCann. We have the over-under is set at 2.5 rounds. The over 2.5 minus 200. The under 2.5 is plus 160. Some money has came in on that plus 180 there. Unfortunately, the fight goes to decision minus 170. The fight doesn't go to decision is plus 140. Blanchfield inside the distance is plus 195. And Propaholic brought it up earlier. I think they like 5 times had Blanchfield inside the distance at something crazy like plus 270, something like that. 5 times says Blanchfield inside the distance. At plus 210. So, yeah, I mean, this is one where I would lean violent, but it's not something I'm running to the window for. Anything sticking out here, Weezy?
Yeah, what's sticking out is I'm pissed off because I said to myself before I went to the gym today, dude, just bet that under 2.5 at plus 180. It's a striker versus grappler matchup. Molly could knock out Aaron if she fights stupid and decides to stand with her. Aaron could absolutely take down Molly and just maul her and get a referee stoppage or get a submission. Now I'm pissed off because I was getting a number of plus 180 and that didn't make sense. And now it's plus 160 and it's a lot more fairly priced. And as a matter of fact, it's a negative trifecta bet now. Here, minus 2%, minus 5%, minus 3%. So it's all overpriced according to all 3 metrics when we compare them to each other. But at plus 180, it was actually underpriced in comparison to the benchmark and a lot closer in these 2 metrics here. So I would definitely bet violence here on this one. There's what is the over 2.5 now? Minus 200?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's no way, dude. I mean, that's fairly priced. It's absolutely fairly priced at minus 200, but I'm not laying 2-1 with cocaine Molly out there and with Aaron Blanchfield, cold-blooded gets on top of you. Do you remember what she was doing to Miranda Maverick? I was shocked that fight wasn't stopped. She was mounting her, beating the hell out of her. And I mean, Miranda's really good on the ground. Molly isn't. So no way I would lay that over 2.5. And even at plus 160, I think the under 2.5 is worth a bet.
What is the fight doesn't go plus 140? Do you think it's better to bet that plus 140 fight doesn't go, get that extra 2.5 minutes, or is there a big difference there?
Okay, so now, really, so we take a look here and we see 2% overpriced in comparison to the benchmark at plus 160 for the under 2.5, but less than 1% overpriced in comparison for the fight doesn't go here. So I definitely think that this one is a little bit better because of its 1% better in comparison to the benchmark, but you get that extra 2.5 minutes. I think that's kind of actually pretty important. But I still am angry with myself that I didn't get that plus 180. I should have had 1 unit on that. God damn it.
Yeah, I mean, I still might bet the fight doesn't go at plus 140. I think Blanchfield does finish Molly, but like you said, she's going to be coked up in there. She's going to be throwing hard, and I mean, and Blanchfield's not the best striker on the feet. So I mean, a striker versus grappler, I don't hate that plus 140. So I might be jumping on that for like a half a unit.
Yeah, and I really think that Molly, if she's got to swing, she's got to go. She's the longer this fight goes, Aaron's getting her takedowns at a 66% clip. She's controlling her opponents 60% of the time. Every time Molly plants and throws, she's got to make it count. So I really do think that the plus money for the violent spots is definitely the side that you want to be on for this fight.
Could not agree more. All right, let us move on. We have Dominic Reyes going against Ryan Spann. I mean, this has violence written all over it. We have the over-under set at 1.5. The over 1.5 minus 120. The under 1.5 is minus 110. The fight doesn't go to decision is minus 325. So you're paying some hefty juice there. But I mean, it makes sense. I mean, you can't obviously lay that, maybe a potential parlay piece, but I think this fight does finish. We saw freaking Anthony Smith dropping Ryan Spann. We saw Sam Alvey dropping Ryan Spann. Dominic Reyes should go out there and drop Ryan Spann and knock him out. On the flip side, if Dominic Reyes shows up, I mean, looks like a bum, he's been out for a year and a half, Ryan Spann's a killer in his own right. So, yeah, I would lean violence, but they're not giving us any breaks here.
They are not, but I don't hate parlaying minus 325 for this fight because we are overpaying 15% in comparison to the benchmark here. But check it out. When we compare what Spann and his opponent are doing at the UFC level, we see that they're actually about 73% of their fights, and we can see that number right down here, 73.68% of their fights are finishing inside the distance. We're only overpaying by about 3% there. And we always know there's about 6-7% of that VIG anyway. So if you're overpaying by 3%, you can actually call that a bit of a fair line because it's just, the VIG 3% on each side is something that you have to pay no matter what side you're on. There's going to be some VIG in there. So that's a really good parlay piece in my opinion because, I mean, Ryan Spann hits like a truck. The guy's landing knockdowns on something like 3% of the significant strikes that he's landing. But when you watch the tape on Ryan, you believe that with every minute that goes by that these guys are standing at kickboxing range, one of those high kicks from Dominic Reyes, which he loads up with both legs, is gonna land and put this dude on Queer Street, and somebody's gonna get knocked out. And if Dominic gets sloppy shooting in for a takedown, you do not want to be in Ryan Spann's guillotine. Do you remember how close Spann was to choking out Alvey on the feet with a standing arm triangle? Like you saw Sam, like the light was leaving his eyes, and then you saw the ref get in there, and then Sam smiles, while he's in that thing, and then he wound up getting out of there. But I mean, Spann's got really good submissions. He's a giant human being, and if he gets his arm around your neck, he can finish you too. So I really do believe this fight finishes inside the distance. I think minus 325 is a fine parlay piece here. This is not overpriced for what, we're expecting to see here, because there's no way that the bookies are going to shade, a violence line for Spann versus this guy, towards the non-violent side. You would expect to see a 15% overpayment here, a 6% under overpayment here. And look, I think this under 1.5 is even better because it's overpriced by 6%, but here we're overpriced by 15. But here we're underpriced by 10.78% when we compare how often these guys go under 1.5, which means that they're going under 1.5 about 63% of the time.
Wow.
Which is 73% is what they're not going to decision. So most of these guys' fights that do finish inside the distance finish under 1.5. So I think that this under 1.5 at minus 110 is a line that you might want to bet straight. And if you want to parlay that minus 325 for the fight doesn't go to decision, I think that's a fine spot as well.
Sounds good. And even better, there's multiple books out there that have that under 1.5 at plus money, 5 dimes plus 100, Jazz plus 102, Sport Bet plus 100. And guess what the under 1.5 opened up at?
Dude, was it plus money? Was it like plus 150 or something? It
was plus 160.
Whoo! Yeah, man. I would have been, I was just going to say something really inappropriate, but I would have been very excited. Let's just put it that way. And I seen a plus 160 for an under 1.5 in a Ryan Spann fight.
Yeah, that was there for a total of 2 minutes.
Yeah, 2 minutes. Yeah, James Krause and the boys smashing that thing after they get that call from Bet Online, man. Come on.
James Krause was all over it indeed. But yeah, I'm with you. Violence. Yeah, if I can get the under 1.5 at plus money, maybe FanDuel will get it out at plus money. I think it's worth a shot.
Dude, absolutely. I mean, if it goes over 1.5, you lose your bet. But I mean, it's not like the process isn't there. It's not like we haven't seen, a high probability of these guys' fights finishing under 1.5. When you get and it's a good sample size, Brady. We got a 19 fight UFC sample size for these guys, and they're finishing under 1.5, 63% of the time. We're only paying 52. You gotta love that. That's a good spot. That's worth just a 1.1 unit bet to win one. That's the analytics in like that one.
Yep, I'm right there with you. I think violence is definitely the answer in this one. Okay, this next one's a weird one because I strongly like violence in this fight. It's just I don't know if I like the price tag, but we'll see what the prop template says about this one. We have Brad Riddell going against Renato Moicano. We have the over under set at 2.5 rounds. The over 2.5 minus 110. The under 2.5 minus 120. The fight goes to decision plus 100, and the fight doesn't go to decision is sitting at minus 130. So I don't know. The minus 130, it does stick out. Both these guys have been finished a lot. I think they've been finished in all but one of their losses. I know Moicano's been finished 100% of his losses. And then on top of that, both guys are dangerous. Both guys very dangerous strikers. Moicano hits hard. He has 0 knockouts, but the club and subs definitely live. And like you were saying last night, Moicano's been going to his takedowns a lot more. And he got a ton of takedowns against Jai Herbert. Got some takedowns against Alexander Hernandez. And once this guy hits the mat, he's a freaking wizard on the mat. We saw Brad Riddell get submitted by Jalen Turner after getting hurt, and he has been submitted another time prior to that as well. So Brad Riddell's been subbed twice. Moicano legit black belt, and I do question the chin of Moicano at some time. So for me, it's violence, but I don't know if I like the price. What's the prop template saying about this one, Weezy?
Yeah, so, we got a little bit of an overpricing here on the violence props, 3.6%, 5.75%, 6%. But when we look at the other analytics, they're not overpriced in comparison to those analytics. These guys finish inside the distance at a 7.33% higher rate than what the 155-pound division does. They are fights are finishing inside the distance at about 58%, and we've only got a 56.5% line. So, excuse me. So yeah, I mean, they're shaded towards the violent side here, Brady, but they're not overpriced. And then if we look at the fight, the non-violence lines here, we've got a lot more fairly priced lines in comparison to the benchmark. But then when we look at the numbers, we see all negative numbers in these 6 spots. So these non-violence lines, in terms of when we compare them to how Moicano and Riddell are going to decision, how they're going over 2.5, how they're going over 1.5, we're overpaying on those implied probabilities when we compare them to those numbers. And same thing here. So definitely we like the violence props here. Also, like you mentioned, 7 of their 8 combined losses as professionals have been inside the distance. 6 of 7, at the UFC level. 5 of 12 of their combined wins. But here's the thing. Moicano, when he loses, he's getting knocked out. What's Brad Riddell what's his path to victory? It's not taking down Moicano and out wrestling. It's landing a big shot. And Moicano a little bit chinny, and boy, he's coming off quite a beating. His last fight was something that he probably shouldn't have taken that fight. It was a great opportunity for him. It definitely did not work out. But I think that this is a decent spot here for violence. I don't hate it at all, Brady. I think fight doesn't go to decision at minus 130 is a bettable line. And that would probably be the best line here, according to the numbers I'm seeing on the prop template.
Yep, I'm right there with you. I might jump on it. I see the under 2.5 rounds is like plus money at some books, but Bet Online minus 120, DraftKings minus 115. So yeah, I think the fight doesn't go. Bet Online does have the best price out there. So yeah, that minus 130, it's really, really tempting.
It is, and if Moicano gets this fight to the ground, man, he gets to your back, and then you're fending off rear naked chokes, and once he gets on your back, he's gonna stay there. So that's a path for Moicano, and like we say, Moicano has been chinny, he has been knocked out several times, and Brad Riddell's got legit kickboxing. So yeah, I think that's a good bet there, minus 130.
I like it. Let's write it down. All right. Okay, we will keep moving on. We have Dan Hooker going against Claudio Poyus. We have the over-under set at 2.5 rounds, the over 2.5 plus 125, the under 2.5 rounds minus 155. The fight goes to decision plus 110. The fight doesn't go to decision is minus 140. And yeah, I think I'd lean violence here. Dan Hooker, I think he has a significant advantage on the feet here. I think he could absolutely put a beating on Poyus on the feet. And if this fight does hit the mat, Poyus's path to victory is what? It's a knee bar. He has 3 of them in the UFC, which is wild. I think 4 submissions in total in the UFC. Dan Hooker has been submitted twice, once in the UFC by Islam. So I kind of see it being like a Dan Hooker, could be a decision or a knockout. But if Poyus does win, I do believe it is by submission. So I would kind of lean violence, if anything. Anything sticking out here, Wheezy?
So violence is the way I'm leaning too. We see that we're 7.77% overpriced here, about 10% overpriced in comparison to the benchmark at the under 2.5. But nice positive 5.67% here, 13.44% here, 3.5% here, 13.37%. So when we're comparing Hooker and Puelli's here in terms of how they're finishing fights, how they're going under 2.5 in comparison to the implied probability of these lines, they're underpriced. If we compare how they go to not to decision and under 2.5 in comparison to how the division does as a whole, they're more violent than the division. So we like that by quite a bit. 13% here, 13% here, 25 fight sample size of 64% of their fights finishing inside the distance. I definitely like that, man. I think that minus 140 is cheaper when we compare it to on this line, cheaper when we compare it on this line, and a little bit cheaper when we compare it on this line. So minus 140, fight doesn't go to decision would be the way that I would go. And if you want to look at the non-violent side here, you're going to see big minus numbers here when we compare these guys. Fight goes in over 2.5 combined to the division and to the implied probability of the line. And we do see that they are underpriced in comparison to the benchmark, and we're getting plus money. So that's a reason to like these bets. But I just don't think that the data that we have for both fighters at this level is pushing you in that direction. So let's say minus 140, fight doesn't go to decision, best bet for this fight.
Yep, agreed. I'm going to play it a little bit different. I bet the Poyus submission prop at plus 400, which just makes no sense to me. That's literally his win condition. And I'm just going to smash the Dan Hooker money line later in the week. But yeah, I do expect violence in this one, and it would be that minus 140. Could you do me a favor and go to the Frivola Isaitar fight? They dropped the fight, doesn't go to decision. I'm curious to see if this changes anything. They have the fight doesn't go to decision at minus 200.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's 6% difference, right? So now if we compare these guys, how they finish in comparison to the divisional finish rate. So we see that they're finishing 60% of the time inside the distance, but this is only 66.67%. And we see that they're also finishing at a 9.44% rate better than what the division does. So the division finishes about 51% of the time. These guys are finishing 60% of the time. So we like that, but it's still overpriced by 6.67% when we compare that 60% number to the 66.67% implied probability of the line. So still overpriced, but a lot cheaper, and it makes a lot more sense as a parlay piece at minus 200 because you've got two pretty violent guys here.
Yeah, I like that minus 200 a lot more than that minus 260 for sure.
Yeah, especially as a parlay piece, and Isaitar only been a decision once in his career, Brady.
Yep, 100%. And a big layoff, huge layoff, like 2 years.
Yep. Perfect. That's another good reason to like it. So at minus 200, that's parlayable.
Absolutely. Okay, 4 fights left. We have Chris Gutierrez going against Frankie Edgar. The over-under 2.5 rounds. The over-2 is set at minus 155. The under 2.5 rounds plus 125. The fight goes to decision minus 140. The fight doesn't go to decision is plus 120. This is kind of a weird one. I kind of see it like Frankie Edgar decision. Gutierrez decision as well. Maybe I think if there's a finish, it's on the Gutierrez side. I don't think the finish only for Gutierrez is a horrible look, especially at the line. It opened up minus 200. It's currently minus 210. I would lean the fight goes to decision in the over. The only concern is the chin of Edgar, and then also the fact that he is 41 years old, and this is more than likely his retirement fight. So I would lean over, but The 41 years old of age is the one thing that would scare me away from laying the price tag. Anything sticking out here?
Yeah, I mean, at the over 2.5, 13% underpriced when we compare. So these guys go over 2.5 rounds 73% of the time between Edgar and Gutierrez at the UFC level. So that's a really big number, 73%. We're only paying 60% here. They're going over 2.5 at a 16% rate higher than what the division does. And this line is only overpriced by 3.1%. So I would definitely say the over 2.5, the way to look here. Frankie Edgar could absolutely get takedowns. And if he does, he's not probably going to get a submission over Gutierrez on the ground, but he can work that clock. He can win those minutes. And Gutierrez, he's not exactly a guy that's known for one-punch power. He can work those legs. He can get the bottom half of your body in serious trouble. But Gutierrez, has landed 4 knockdowns in 8 fights. So that's actually pretty good. He does have a little more power than what I thought. I would have to recommend the over 2.5 here in terms of being the best priced line according to what I'm seeing here, because underpriced by 1.5, overpriced by 1.3. So they're, right around where they should be here, Brady. But look, 10% overpriced, 17% overpriced, 16% overpriced, 11% overpriced. It's just too much. The value is on the over side. Hold your breath. Hope that Frankie Edgar has one more good fight in him. Maybe if you want to go those overs, you pick Frankie Edgar by decision because it means he didn't get knocked out. Maybe he got some takedowns, won a bunch of minutes on the ground. He can absolutely get takedowns in this fight. We'll see what happens. But, yeah, I would have to say that my favorite price line is the over 2.5 at minus 150.
Yeah, I don't hate it. And I'm also going to be looking at the Frankie Edgar maybe decision only as well, just in case his legs do get chopped up bad. So, but yeah, I'm with you. I think the over is probably the best way to play it. Yeah. All right. 3 fights left. Let us move on. I got to scroll all the way down here. So we have the Dustin Poirier going against Michael Chandler fight. We have the over-under set at 1.5, the over 1.5 minus 130. The under 1.5 is plus 100. The fight goes to decision plus 195. The fight doesn't go to decision is minus 240. Yeah, I think it's a clear violent spot here. Minus 240, though, I'm not sure if I love that. And I'm not even sure if I love the under 1.5. At this point, I probably see myself staying away. But I do think this fight finishes in fairly early as well. I think Michael Chandler in the first round is super dangerous, but 36 years old now. The guy's been knocked out a ton. Poirier hits super hard. Yeah. I kind of see it being like Chandler first round. If not, I think Poirier kind of gets him out of there in that second or third. So I'd lean violence here, but we're not getting a great price tag.
Yeah, it's overpriced by 20% when we compare it to the benchmark of 7 or these guys go to decision 50% of the time, right? So a fight doesn't go to decision 50% of the time, which means that at 70%, you're overpaying by about 20% when you compare it to the benchmark for the division. Now, these guys are actually finishing inside the distance. We got that number right down here, 67.74% of the time in 31 fights. And it's similar, finish percentages for both fighters here. So you take that 67%, you compare it to the 70% line. It's only overpriced by about 3%. Not bad, and we're underpriced by 17% because these guys are finishing inside the distance about 67% of the time. The division only finishes 50% of the time. So we like that number as well. But, we do have to be aware, that we're overpaying here and that these lines are not exactly yet underpriced in comparison to the benchmarks that we have. So it might be just a stay away. If you would have to have a big sack to be like betting overs in this fight because it would be just torture watching Poirier and Chandler not trying to finish each other for 15 minutes. Big time plus money numbers here. But even these, you'd like to see them underpriced in comparison to what the lines are, and they're just not. They're just not. I mean, they're underpriced in comparison to the benchmark, but these guys are finishing at a 20% rate higher than the benchmark. So it's just not enough to get me to bet, the overs here. This is a big stay away. Either that or maybe you parlay up that minus 240 fight doesn't go to decision with like the Isaitar fight doesn't go to decision, and maybe you get something close to plus money.
Yeah, I think it's a solid parlay piece. Minus 265 on 5 dimes. It looks like BetOnline does have the best price out there. Yeah, I like violence, but minus 240. I mean, just can't do much with it. They're kind of all over it there. Yeah, the over 1.5. I see it a lot on. It's a very popular play out there. Which I mean, I could see the over 1.5 hitting, but at what cost? At what cost to your health?
Yeah, it's terrifying. It's terrifying in the way Chandler has fought every damn time at the UFC level. He's just fighting like he's triple parked. Like he has no interest in being paid by the minute or by the hour. He wants to get in and out.
Yeah, it's gonna be a slug fest.
There's
It's
no
gonna be a
question.
slug fest. I don't know if I want to touch any overs in this one.
Yeah,
But yes, we have the co-main event next. Oh, we have the co-main event next. We have Carla Esparza going against the very handsome Zhang Weili. We have the over-under set at 4.5 rounds, the over 4.5 minus 105, the under 4.5 minus 125. The fight goes to decision plus 130. The fight doesn't go to decision minus 160. So I saw the minus 160 opened up on BetOnline. I'm like, what the heck? And then I see FanDuel is hanging a plus 106 under 4.5. So I jumped on that for a half a unit. It is now currently minus 108, but I do like violence in this fight. I don't like the minus 160 though. I'll tell you that, but I think Zhang Weili finishes Carla Esparza. I mean, Zhang Weili looked like a freaking killer in her last fight against Joanna, and that first round almost finished her. The second round came around, that spinning back fist. If Carla Esparza is not able to get this fight down to the mat and keep it there, I think she's in some deep shit. So I like the under at minus 180. I still don't hate it, but I mean, BetOnline, they're nuts. Minus 160. I'm not sure what they're doing. I'm curious to see what 5 dimes has it at. Maybe 5 dimes has a more reasonable price. 5 dimes has the fight doesn't go at minus 115. I think that's much better. So I'm not sure what BetOnline's doing, and I'm sure DraftKings and FanDuel will probably put out a better price than them. So on BetOnline, I would not play that minus 160. I'd kind of wait for other books because it's probably overpriced by a ton.
Yeah, these now we've got to look at the 5-round analytics here, right? And we'll take you over here to women's strawweight division. They're finishing inside the distance 47.62% of the time, 10 of 21 times. And they're going under 4.5 47% of the time as well, so you get a little bit fatter plus money number on the under 4.5. We've never had a strawweight fight finish in the last two and a half minutes of the 25. So 42.86 for the under 3.5. We know what these benchmarks are now, and we're paying 53% right here for the fight doesn't go. A little bit of an overpayment, but not 23% as we're, because that's the 3-round benchmark here. I think that Weili probably can finish Esparza if Esparza just isn't having success with the wrestling. But Esparza might, surprise us and have success with the wrestling. We're going to have to wait and see how this works out. But I couldn't bet against Weili Zhang to win this fight after that last performance. She looked terrifying, and I was already scared of her, So, she might just be getting better. She's not exactly over the hill by any stretch of the imagination. So we could see Weili 2.0 here, and she just takes it to the next level. And Carla, is not a champion that a lot of people have a lot of faith in right now. She just got married. She, her belt-winning performance was one of the most lackluster performances that we've ever seen wind up walking out with the belt. So definitely interesting here. I think I would lean towards the violence side. But these lines are pretty fairly priced. You look at the 55% per fight goes, they're going 53% of the time. So I guess it just depends on what your read is. But I'm with you, Brady. I think Weili probably does get this done. And Desi Jairon saying in the chat, picking up Ngannou. Yeah, we all saw that, man. That was something else, dude. She's picking up Francis Ngannou. She's got some seriously strong legs to pick that man up.
I mean, she might throw Esparza out of the cage if she can do that.
Some old school wrestling shit where she just throws her out of there, man. That would be great.
I mean, Esparza by decision is plus 600. Like, that's how she wins.
I think that's how she wins, and that's not a bad hedge if you've got a few units on Wei Li this weekend.
Yeah, but another reason I did go with that under 4.5 around even money was because on Bet Online they have Wei Li inside the distance at -125, so I might as well just get both sides there.
Yeah, there you go. Get both sides and even get better money. If Esparza finishes the fight, you're laughing your ass off.
Oh yeah.
There you go.
Absolutely. All right, we have the main event, Weezy, and this one, I don't know. This one's tricky for me. We have the over-under set at 4.5 rounds. The over 4.5 is -130. The under 4.5 is +100. It was hanging at +140 for like a month. And I was like going to play it the entire time. And then I just wait too long. And now it's at +100. The fight goes to decision -115. The fight doesn't go to decision -115 on Bet Online. Everywhere else, it's plus money. Plus money on Betway, 365, Unibet, FanDuel, Bet Rivers, DraftKings. So Bet Online has by far the worst line out there. I was kind of leaning violence, and maybe I still kind of am, but I could just see a scenario where Adesanya, in typical Adesanya fashion, risk adverse, doesn't take many risks, goes in there and just outpoints Pereira to a 25-minute decision. But Pereira's never seen the 4th round. He's never seen the 5th round. I don't like him defensively. And Adesanya said this quote, I'm going to see if I can pull it up. And I don't believe him at all, Weezy. I do not believe him. I actually think it's pretty funny. So Adesanya said this, and tell me if you believe this. Adesanya said he wants to make this weekend a, quote, horror movie. He says it's going to be, quote, bloody. And he said it's going to be like, who can swim the longest, who is going to drown. Do you believe that?
No, I think he's going to stand at range. I think he's going to fucking stand in range and do what he always fucking does. I mean, dude, how many times, Brady, have we heard this fucking guy, Israel Adesanya, talk about, I'm going to take this guy down. You're going to see me get my first submission. It's like listening to somebody at a poker table. Somebody at a poker table is only telling you shit that they want you to think you're thinking, So, these guys lie all the fucking time. That's why I don't listen to interviews if I can help it. I will listen to it every once in a while. I'll listen to something. If it's a fighter I like, if it's Colby Covington, I know I'm going to laugh, But, if some fighter, I remember a while back, Jairzinho Rozenstruik before his Volkov fight, he was showing, clips of him taking down dudes in the gym. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's great. A guy that's fucking shot 0 takedowns at the UFC level is going to turn into a wrestler against Alexander Volkov. I mean, come on. Who are you fucking bullshitting? Everybody knows you're not trying to take this guy down, but it's just funny sometimes. So, yeah, I mean, I think Israel is full of shit.
I do, too. You got Pereira in the building. Alex Pereira fighting this Saturday. What's up, Alex Pereira?
Yeah, dude, good to see Alex Pereira in here. Poatan has got that serious left hook, man. And if it lands, Izzy's going to be going to sleep for the second time at the hands of this guy. Yeah,
I mean, how about these 5-round analytics? Anything sticking out? Because, I mean, I'd still kind of lean violence, but I could very well see Izzy just making it a boring fight like he does and winning. I mean, he's really good at doing that.
Yeah, he is. I mean, we got a 58% finish rate in 58 fights at the 185-pound division that are 5 rounds. So, yeah, it's actually a finish rate that's barely higher than what they're finishing at a 3-round rate. And I'll tell you why. It's because Adesanya goes to decision all the goddamn time in these 5-round fights. It's actually skewed that finish rate since Adesanya became champion from something probably around 63, 64% down to 58%. So if we look at these lines, 58% is the benchmark for fight doesn't go. We're only paying 47% here. So when we take that divisional finish rate of 58% and subtract the implied probability of the line, we're actually getting like a 10% break here. And these guys are finishing inside the distance only 37.5% of the time. So that is actually pretty important here. In terms of the fight goes, we can see here a 58% line, and we know that they're only going to decision about 42% of the time, 43%. So that's a little bit of an overpayment here. Poatan's got a ton of power, And we've never seen him go 5 rounds in a mixed martial arts fight before. So we'll have to see how that goes. And what if Izzy does choose to wrestle him a little bit? That could actually, drain the gas tank of Pereira. But I mean, I don't think we're really going to. Izzy's never even completed a takedown at the UFC level. I mean, if there's a fight where he's going to get one, it's going to be this one because Poatan can't really wrestle. That's not his game. But, it's not Israel's game either. So we've seen this fight before a couple of different times, Brady. It's just that there's a different rule set this time. They're going to have different size gloves on. And one guy is a lot more experienced than the other.
Yeah, I mean, I laughed out loud when I said Adesanya said he's going to make this a horror movie and a bloody mess. I mean, get out of here! You're going to dance around for 25 minutes. You don't want to fight this guy. Come on.
It's going to be a 2-hour horror movie where nobody gets killed and you're just waiting for someone to die and nobody dies, and then you leave the fucking movie theater like, what the fuck did we just pay for?
Yes.
So. Yeah, man, I think that's kind of what it is. And we can, this is one of the hottest shows on the internet, Propability taking the internet by storm. Not only do we have Alex Poatan Pereira in the chat, but Israel Adesanya as well. They're just as interested, in what you and I have to say about this fight as everybody else here is. And we thank them for joining us.
Yep, and we thank all you guys for joining us. So we need to kind of go over the spots that stuck out the most. There haven't been a ton of parlay pieces that stuck out the last 2 weeks, but this week there's actually a couple that kind of stick out to me.
Yeah, like for instance, Isaitar Frivola fight doesn't go to decision at -200, I think is parlayable. And we can parlay that with the Poirier Chandler fight doesn't go to decision, sitting at about what was that? -325 or something? -240. So that's actually not bad. And then wasn't there a -325? Oh, yeah. Span Reyes fight doesn't go to decision at -325. I thought we could parlay all 3 of those. Span Reyes fight doesn't go. Isaitar Frivola fight doesn't go. And Chandler Poirier fight doesn't go. And get a plus money number.
Yep. So it comes out to plus 178.
Yeah, that's not bad. That's not a bad 3-leg violence parlay there. But the spots that stuck out for me, Brady, Nega-Marionu Oberg over 1.5 at -145. I think that's a good look. The Aaron Blanchfield versus Molly McCann under 2.5. I know that Propaholic said that Caesars has still got it at plus 180. So that's the first fucking thing I'm doing after we're done here is I'm going to Caesars and I'm putting one unit at plus 180 on the fight or on the under 2.5 for Blanchfield versus McCann. Nice. The under 1.5, Brady, -110 for Span Reyes, I think is absolutely bettable. Moicano Riddell, fight doesn't go to decision at -130 is a bettable line. Hooker Puelli's fight doesn't go to decision at -140 is a bettable line. I think those are all good spots this week.
Yep, I'm right there with you on a lot of those. Love the Oberg, Nega-Marionu over 1.5. I don't hate that fight doesn't go for the Frivola fight at like -200. I don't think that's a terrible price.
Nope. That's really good, dude.
Yeah, I like it. I like the
Blanchfield. That's straight bettable.
Yeah, I think so as well.
Yeah.
And then I like the Blanchfield McCann under 2.5 where the fight doesn't go. I'll see if I can get that plus 185 on Caesars or plus 180. That'd be nice. Yeah, I'm with you. Span Reyes like under 1.5. Maybe the fight won't start round 3. Riddell Moicano, that violence really stuck out at only -130. And I think that's about it. Maybe I might jump on that main event violence, just see what happens at plus money. Pereira's never seen the 4th and 5th. But yeah, that's about it. But yeah, a lot of spots sticking out this week, which is weird because the last 2 weeks, like nothing has stuck out.
Yeah, this is much better. But like I say, when you've got these big data sets, sometimes the lines open in the wrong spot or they can just get pushed too far in one direction or another. And we can take advantage of that because we've got a nice, robust data set to back up all of our benchmarks. So we love weeks like this, man. I think they're great spots, and I'm going to hit several of them.
Absolutely. Great spots, great show, great chat today. The chat was bumping today. Appreciate all you guys. Weezy, let the people know where they can find you, what you have going on throughout the rest of the week for some content.
Yeah, check me out tomorrow night, 10 o'clock Central Time for Just the Tip with Uncle Weezy. We're going to break down all 14 of these fights from a tape study and stats perspective. I'm going to give you my track bets thus far for UFC 281, and we're going to finish with Uncle Weezy's ass shaving of the week. I'll be doing Ask Weezy either Wednesday night or maybe even tonight if I'm feeling a little bit froggy, so to speak.
Ooh, okay.
You never know, because it's a big week. Might want to jump on that a little bit early. We'll see how I feel, but I will be putting that link out on Twitter if I do it tonight. And yeah, let's just stack cash tickets like flapjacks, dude, for UFC 281. You guys already all know where you can find me.
Let's go. Yep, I gotta do some more work. Gonna be looking into a little bit more of these fights. There's 2 fights I need to dig into a little bit more. But yeah, there's a lot of spots that stick out, man. I think I'm gonna just unload on a lot of spots either tonight or tomorrow. I'm hoping FanDuel and DraftKings get these lines out. It is a pay-per-view week, so hopefully FanDuel doesn't wait till Thursday night. That'd be nice. But yep, you guys can follow me on Twitter, DFS_numbers, Instagram, DFS by numbers. I did post my full card breakdown and prediction video nice and early on a Monday, so check that out if you have not already. And yeah, best of luck, UFC 281, phenomenal card. The last 2 cards have been complete shit. We made it through them, and now we get to enjoy ourselves wheezy on a Saturday. Hopefully win some money, but most importantly, enjoy the fights. Thank you guys. Best of luck. See you guys soon.